You know, copywriting, if you're not familiar with it, might seem daunting. It might seem overwhelming to look at that blank screen or piece of paper and you just don't know how to get started. So I wanted to leave you some tips, some mental tips for really approaching copywriting. I want you to know that even the pros struggle from time to time when it comes to writing. But the difference is we've gone through the process so many times. We know when an obstacle pops up that it really isn't the end of the world and that we can write around that obstacle. You know, I know that myself, you know, at times in my career, I've struggled with writer's block, with self-doubt, with negative self-talk. I think those are constant things that writers go through, you know, that creatives go through. So I really want to encourage you that the way to overcome, if you ever get stuck with writing, if you don't know how to approach it, or if you're in the middle of your copy and you're just getting stuck or frustrated, one of my best tips for you is to leave that environment. You know, if I'm getting writer's block and I'm not really be able to progress in my writing, sometimes the best thing is to take a break. I get up, I go for a 5-minute walk, I go and make a cup of tea or coffee, might call a friend for a few minutes. I just get away from that and then come back to it. I allow myself to kind of decompress. I want you to imagine if you've ever went to, you know, if you went to high school and you had exams. I remember exam time, I would be so stressed and nervous about the exam. I'd sit down, I had 45 minutes for the exam and, you know, I'd write out, you know, trying to answer the exam. And then what I found was as soon as I left the exam hall and the exam was done, I would leave and then suddenly I'd have all these ideas flood in that I hadn't thought about during the exam time. And the reason was I was just stressed and anxious during the writing process in that exam. But as soon as I left, kind of decompressed, I was able to get that inspiration to come back in, and it allowed me to then go back, well, not to the exam, but with my writing, I can now come back after that short break and I can then continue with the writing. Another thing to remember is that write many first drafts. I aim to write many crappy first drafts. I know that the first thing I sit down to write isn't my best piece of work. So what I'll often do is write many first drafts, realizing the first few are quite crappy, but I don't have high expectations to begin with. I know that the first draft is probably going to be crappy, but by the third or fourth draft, it's going to be something usable and quite good. But too many new writers, they sit down and think, I've done this course or class, I'm now ready, and if it doesn't come out smoothly and perfectly, they mentally beat themselves up and then, you know, leave the situation feeling quite deflated. Don't set yourself up for failure. Know that your first few attempts are probably going to be quite crappy, and that's totally okay. It happens to all of us. But approach writing from the easy parts first. If you know that you're going to write your headline, you're going to use one of the templates, great, do that first. If you know that you're going to write about your competitive advantages first, do that first. Writing isn't linear. You could start from any part of the web page that you're writing, and then you can move, once you've done the easy parts, to a harder part later. So that's just some tips for approaching copywriting, especially as a beginner. Know that it's difficult. Know that the pros often struggle. Give yourself a break if it gets a little bit hard. You can always come back to it. And of course, write the easy parts first. I really hope you've enjoyed this class. This is my first Skillshare class. I'm going to be publishing a lot more in the future. Please stay tuned for those. I hope you post your class project in the section, and I look forward to seeing you in a future class.